yes, as I put up on X, I am joined by the absolute Colchester United legend that is Mr. Kem Izzet. Kem, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Like I said just a minute ago, just got back from work. Kids are upstairs. They've been at work, and one of them's been at work. One's been at college. My little girl's out around a friend's house, just trying to forge a new career. Now it's whilst football was amazing, it's very short, and you then have to move on and try and do something else to earn a living.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like you say, the career for footballers is very short. We will get into your career with us at Colchester United. Cast your mind back. It's 2001. You've
Mm.
just signed for Colchester. What was that feeling like?
Um, some relief, in the sense that I'd just been let go. I'd had words with Alan Kirbishley probably in the January, asking what was going on. Am I getting a new deal at the end of that season, knowing full well that I probably wasn't. He told me no. He said that he would get me some help in trying to find another club. Um, Went to Reading on trial, done really well for a period. Then sort of pulled my hamstring in one of a practice in a training game. Came back, got some treatment at Cholton, went back to Reading. Probably a little bit too early at a trial, another game against Southampton. Played against a really old Chris Marsden, and gave me a bit of a footballing lesson that day. And that didn't really do well enough to warrant anything at Reading. So they told me that I wouldn't be getting anything there. They wanted someone to go in instantly, and whilst they rated me, it was a polite way of saying I wasn't good enough, basically, which I got, and that's fine. I then got a trial at Gillingham with Andy Hessenthaler. Went and played a game against Bournemouth. Didn't particularly pull up any trees. Done all right, just okay, but not well enough to warrant getting anything. Same thing. They said they were looking to get someone to come in and hit the ground running, and didn't think I was ready at the moment. And so then, not panic, but a little bit of fear kicks in, thinking, "Am I gonna make it here? What am I going to do?" And a good friend of mine, family of a friend, a friend of the family, Steve Watts, he got me a trial at Colchester. First day, turned up at Low Road. He took me down there, and said to me, "Right, this is what they're looking for. They're looking for someone who can get around the pitch, someone who can be competitive, stick their foot in. They've got a really old squad. They need some legs in there, so you need to make sure that you're working hard." And went to Low Road. We walked down to Shrub End, and we trained at Shrub End, just down the road, which is where our training ground was for a period of time under Steve Wisson. I remember training and just kicked everything that moved, including footballs and players. And I think it rattled a few people. I think they were thinking, who's this little scrote coming in, kicking people? Had a trial game, at a reserve game on the Tuesday. Done all right. Like, I wouldn't say I was amazing, but I was physical and all the things that they asked me to be. Had Wednesday off, come in and trained Thursday. Done all right again. Went around kicking people again on a Thursday. Friday, pretty much the same. And then the squad goes up on Friday, and I find myself in the first team squad against Luton. It was like the first time I'd ever been involved in a first team, so it was like pure excitement. Thinking, "Oh right, okay." So I was on the bench, got put on the bench. Joe Keefe gets injured after about 26 minutes. Gavin Johnson was playing centre midfield that day with, I think he was with Dozer or Aaron Skelton, one of those two. Gavin Johnson gets moved back to left back, and Steve Whitten calls me up, "Kem, you're on." 26 minutes into the game, and I'm thinking, right, okay, this is a little bit new. We go on and win 2-0. I played pretty well. I done well. And on the Monday, they ask, "Do you want to sign?" I had a few interviews after the game, obviously, because it was my debut. I remember Matt Hudson asking me, "Oh, would you want to sign if something was offered to you?" And I'm, of course, yeah, I'd love to. And then Steve Whitten calls me in on Monday and asks, "We'd like to sign you to for this year and next. Is that something you want to do?" I was like, "Yeah." Didn't even negotiate wages. Just, I'll take whatever you've got. And that was it. And it was like, right, okay, now I can not relax, but I can take a breather and now start get to work and see if I can forge a career and establish myself in the first team. And I don't think I really looked back from that day. It was a bit of a whirlwind, and it was some relief, is what I would say. Is a really long answer to your question.
So yeah, obviously in your career, 420 appearances for the club. Of the games that you played, when the team sheet was announced, who was that sort of dream partner or a player that you sort of learnt the ropes from the most?
So they all teach you something. Do you know what I mean? So Watto was amazing, and he taught me his passing range was fantastic and stuff like that. But I suppose you're most impressionable when you're at your youngest and you're starting out. Now there were lots of people at Colchester that I looked at Cholton when I was there, that I looked at, like Mark Kinsella and Klaus Jensen and people like that. But I suppose the biggest influence would have probably been Bobby Bowery. He told me, so I remember it vividly. Before a game, we would get a load of sheets of paper and reports on players that you was playing against about their strengths and their weaknesses and what to expect from them and what not to expect from them. And I would always read them before a game, and Bobby would never read them at all. And I'm like, "Bob, do you want these?" And he's like, "No, I'm okay." And I was like, "Really? Like, why not?" And he was like, "Kem, you got to stop beating yourself up about other people and start imposing your game on others and let them worry about you." And from that day on, not that I didn't do any research on people, because it was always given to you. However, I wasn't hung up on it. And so it was imposing my own game on other people. So the person that probably sticks out the most is probably Bobby Bowery.
At that young age, Bobby sort of taught you that just go out there, you play your
Yeah,
game.
exactly.
It doesn't matter what they do or what they can do. If you're playing your game and you're on form, it doesn't matter.
That's
You
exactly
can,
what I said. And I used to travel in with him a lot every day, because he was a London boy and I was coming from the M25. So we would jump in the car and we would car share, and you would just pick his brains about stuff. And he he taught me to not care what people said or have a thick skin about things. And people are always gonna knock you about something, and so you just need to toughen your skin up and ignore it and let it just roll off your back and just carry on doing what you're doing. And the only person that you really need to please is the manager. And so he taught me that, and it stuck with me forever, and it done all right.
yeah, obviously, further on into your career, obviously, like I say, the more that you played, the more that you established yourself as the key player in the team. Is that then something that you passed on to the younger players coming into the team and sort of took what Bobby taught you, took what Kev Watson taught you, and then brought that on to the younger players?
Yeah, I think so. Like, so Watto had his strengths. Okay, so he was someone that was fantastic on the ball, but probably he would tell you that he couldn't get around the pitch as much, right? So you had to do his running for him, and that was fine. And we really gelled well, because I would get him the ball and he would do what he wanted to do. The things that I used to tell the lads is, your attitude needs to be spot on. Is that you might think you're really good, but your attitude needs to be spot on, and you need to make sure that you're ready to train every day. Like, and when you come, it's 100% every day, because that's the way I trained. It was like, there's a tackle to be won in training. I'm going in and I'm tackling in training. I don't want to hurt anybody, but if someone gets hurt, that's just the way it's going to be. You train like you want to play, and that's what is I try to impose into people like Alex Gilby. I think that I had quite a bit to do with him. He cleaned my boots as a kid, and you try and tell them and you try and guide them in a way of he does it for the next people. And I'm sure he went on done it for Sammy, and he went and done it for the next generation. And it's part of, as you get older, that's part of passing on the mantle to the next person.
Yeah, you used the word perfect there. You said you guide them. You used the guidance and said, look, like, this is what I was taught at a young age, and look at the career I've had. I'm not
Yeah,
saying that.
I don't think I ever said look at the career I've had, because that's not my position to say that. But it's just, if you want some longevity in the game, which is what everybody wants, there are certain criteria that need to be met. Like, don't get me wrong, Ryan, there were hundreds of players that were probably technically better than I was, right? And that's absolutely fine. I can live with that. Like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't a mug and I wasn't someone that couldn't play, but I understood what my strengths and weaknesses were at a very early age and maximized them to my full potential. And that's the kind of guidance I would tell people is this: yes, work on your weaknesses, of course you do. However, be the best at something. So that way they can't not have you in the team.
Yeah.
And I think that is what I learned, and I tried to push on to Alex and those kind of people.
Yeah. No, and like you say, to have someone like yourself and the other players, that I've got a list of some of your former players, and just reading through them, just what they would be like in the dressing room, you would think just absolute leaders, and the sort of guidance that you could get from them. So if you could just,
between 2 or 3 years where the dressing room, you wouldn't have it didn't need managing.
Yeah, it managed itself.
Yeah, it managed itself. Yeah, and there was people that if people stepped out of line, they got brought back to earth very, very quickly, because you just wouldn't stand for it. And I think that Parky and Grant Williams at the time done an amazing job of that, and Mick Hartford, because it did spill into Mick Hartford as well. They done an amazing job of that in bringing in and recruiting the right people.
Yeah. So as you say, have that dressing room sort of looked after itself. And like I say, these names that I've got, I can tell straight off the bat which ones were probably them people. So if you could just give a quick sort of just couple of sentences for each player. Carl Dugard.
Again, he was a youth team player. So what he brought to that was he was Mr. Colchester. So he set a standard that, okay, this is what Colchester is, and that's what we need to do. So he was Mr. Colchester in the sense that he'd lived and breathed it from the very beginning. So we just all followed.
Yeah, he'd been in the stands with us.
Absolutely.
And then he's on the pitch.
The ranks with them, played at Wembley with them, had a fantastic career with them. Yeah, so
so another one, Scott McLeish.
Yeah, so Scott McLeish, early doors. So I love Scotty. I saw him not too long ago, right? And Scotty was, as a player, he was amazing for us, but didn't like change. So the sort of the mood changed, and it wasn't because of Scotty, but once that lot moved on, Parky moved them on, it sort of, we turned into a professional outfit. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah. Another man that is still with the club in a sort of more backroom role at the moment, Mr. David Gregory.
See, again, he was one of those that, as I went in, he had lost the mobility and was reliant on the younger people to do his work for him. But again, a really good professional, an unbelievable professional, had an amazing career, played with Ipswich. So someone you would learn off of. He just wasn't there long enough with me. He was right at the tail end of his career, and I was just starting mine.
Yeah, I think there's another one sort of that was probably coming towards sort of the end. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yeah, so Fitz was unbelievable. Again, like, for someone who had no pace at that point, really struggled with his pace, was struggling with injury, read the game so well. It was almost, he'd be better now playing than what he was back then, because he was really good on the ball, read the game really well, didn't really need to make crunching tackles, was super good. For a young lad, he was really good to have around you. Yeah, amazing.
Joe Dunn.
Yeah, Joe Dunn, he was the aggressor, and a little bit of a loose cannon in the dressing room, would try and rile people to get them going. Times have changed, you know what I mean? Like I don't think that would work nearly as well now, but back then it worked brilliantly.
Yeah, a man that you mentioned towards the start. So you came on for him, Joe Keefe.
I grew up with Joe, so he grew up where I grew up, so I know Joe really well. Like, he was technically one of the best players Colchester would have ever had. He lived not like a professional footballer. So he lived like he was playing Sunday football, but was still amazing. And if he would have dedicated himself to be as fit as he possibly can, he could have played even higher.
One of them where you sort of look at him and you're like, just try just a little bit more to go towards a professional, and he's like, nah.
It was, but there's so many people that I could say that about. Like, so.
Yeah.
There was a lad that at Cholton that I was with, a lad that's gone on and had an amazing career as a coach and as a manager. He's a lad called Michael Beale, right? So he was probably the best left winger I'd seen growing up. But his attitude at that time just was too laid back and didn't want to work hard. And he had an amazing left foot. He was about 6'1". He was like a Rolls Royce he moved. And you just thought, oh, he could go all the way. And then you just think, come on, mate, like, give us a little bit more. Give us a little bit more. And he didn't. However, the career that he's forged for himself after that is amazing. And it's testament to him that it doesn't surprise me in the sense of how good he was as a footballer, but what it did surprise me is he changed the way that his thought process was, and fair play to him.
Sort of learned from what he did.
Clearly, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, no, perfect. So they're sort of some players that for me, I know of them, but these next batch of players for me are the ones that, if people was to say to me, pick your 11, these are the players that instantly come to mind.
Okay.
A man that I saw make his debut for Colchester twice, Dean Gherkin.
Yeah, he's an absolute fruitcake. Yeah, fruitcake. But unbelievable goalkeeper. Unbelievable. Yeah. And he was lucky that he learned off an even better goalkeeper in Aidan Davison. Like, he was so fortunate. Him and Mark Cousins were so lucky that they could learn off of him, because he's everything you want in a goalkeeper to learn from. Like, super professional, amazing banter, just as crazy as the next goalkeeper. And I would imagine Dino would say that he probably helped him with his career.
Yeah, no, I'll be honest, what goalkeeper isn't?
Well, if they're not insane, they're not going to be any good, is what I would say.
I'll do these next two as a pair, because I remember the pair of them just being an absolute unit. Pat Baldwin and Wayne Brown. Yeah,
again, two real big personalities in the dressing room. And so was Dino, but he was just a little bit younger. But Pat Baldwin and Brownie, you wouldn't get much change from either of them. They were laughing, jokey, but at the same time, it's like, when it's work time, it's work time. And part of that core group that just wouldn't stand for any rubbish, really.
Yeah, they were the two people that like that when I was younger and I was playing Sunday League, they were the ones that I was like looking at, because to me it was, as soon as that whistle went, 3:00 on a Saturday, it was right, game time.
Yeah,
this is what I'm doing. Nothing flash, simple stuff. Do the simple stuff right. And I mean, we all remember the year where we got promoted, but we'll get onto that a little bit later on. A few players that sort of played in and around your position. Obviously, we spoke about Kevin Watson a little bit. But Neil Dans, Richard Garcia, Johnny Jackson.
So Danzy, when he came in and took my place, right? And I was sat there, and there were things that he done that nobody else could do, and there were things that I could do that he wouldn't have done. So he wouldn't have gone around, and he could get around the pitch. Don't get me wrong; he was as mobile as anybody, and he was quick. But what he done that season was crazy good. Like I think he got 20 goals from midfield, and everything he touched was like just literally turned to gold. And he was. I couldn't really. I'd sit there on the bench and think, like, am I getting back into this team? Because Watto's playing well, we're winning every week, and Danzy is scoring week in, week out, and you just think, right, okay, I've just got to bide my time and wait. And it's as frustrating it is, you just have to accept it. And then you move on to Richard Garcia, that he is an absolute fruitcake in the sense he's off the pitch, he's chilled and he's laid back, and then he gets on the pitch and he's the most aggressive and fiery, but one of the most talented players you'll come across. He was such a good player. He was quick, fantastic in the air. He could score goals. He worked hard. He was everything you need from a right midfielder. Hence why he went and had an amazing career and played for his country. There's no that he's done that. And then Jacko, I think Jacko was unfortunate playing at ours because, again, someone with an amazing left foot, but was probably at ours a little bit too early in his career because he wanted to get forward and score goals, and he could score goals, don't get me wrong. But when he didn't score, this is only playing for Colchester because he went on and done really well at Charlton and had a fantastic career. And I played against him many times, but he didn't want to do the defensive side of it. So if he wasn't scoring, so when Danzy wasn't scoring, I say wasn't scoring, he scored every other game, Danzy. So it's like he never had that opportunity you couldn't ever say to him, well, he ain't scoring enough goals. Whereas Jacko would get forward and not score, and then you'd think, right, what is he bringing to the game? And so he then fell out of the team, and he was asked to play at left back, and he didn't really enjoy being left back, and hence why he wanted to move on. But again, a super talented footballer and someone that I'm still really good friends with, and he's having an amazing managerial career. And all I want is the best for him. He's an amazing guy, someone that I spent a lot of time with and been to his wedding and stuff like that. He's a really nice guy. So them four people, yeah, the three, so Danzy, Richard and Watto played when we got promoted the most. And I suppose it's that year when we got promoted and we played Chelsea in the FA Cup in the FA Cup fifth round. It feels like I didn't do enough that year because I was sat on the bench. Now, at the same time, I know that in training I was still doing things right, and I'm pushing them to be better and making sure that their levels are up and they're playing well. But when I'm not playing, it feels I don't. It's something that I don't enjoy, and it feels like I'm not contributing enough. So that year, as amazing as that career was, and I've spoken to many people about this, and they think, how do you think like that? But it's just something that as a player, when you're not playing, you don't feel you contribute. So as good as that season was, it's probably one of my worst seasons because I didn't play enough.
Yeah, that is really a really interesting way of like looking at it. Like you say, it sounds like you was giving at the time you was giving Parky a absolute headache because he was like, so I think back then we mainly played like a 4-4-2.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And he was sitting there, right, I've got four absolutely incredible central midfielders that all offer me four different things.
Yeah.
I can only pick two of them.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
he was like, I put Kem with Watto. Watto's not going to run around as much, but Kem will cover him. I put Johnny and Danzy together. They're going to just be absolutely electric. And it sounds like you gave him an absolute headache.
But at the same time, he picked the right partnership because we got
Yeah,
promoted. Danzy scored
exactly.
20 goals and Watto was doing what he done. And so you can't argue with him, and he's done an amazing job for the club, Parky. So he got it right. He got it absolutely spot on. It's just at that time it was super frustrating for me as a player. That was all.
Yeah. So moving into the sort of the attackers in the team, again, I've got two sets that I'll do as a pair, and then I've got a complete red herring that I still have no idea how he played for Colchester United. But Chris Iliumo and Jamie Kieran, them two together, for a fan, watching them two play together, it was little and large. It was incredible, and they were fighting each other for Golden Boot, but they never. If they would always look for each other. They wouldn't be like, no, I'm the Golden Boot. I need to score goals. It was no, Chris is in a better position. I'll give it to him. Jamie's in the better position. Give it to him.
Right. Well, the crazy thing about all of that is that if you was within the training group, it was a total opposite. Is that all they wanted to do was outscore each other, and so that probably helped them do what they done because they were so well driven and so ambitious. I'm not sure Curo would ever look to pass to anybody. I think
fair enough.
He's probably the most selfish striker I've ever seen, and rightly so, because he's also probably the best finisher I've ever seen.
I was about to say, would you sort of sit there and go, like you say, one of the most selfish strikers you've seen, but you're scoring the goals, so I'll of let it slide.
You had to. Like, there were times where I would run as a midfield player. You would run 60 yards to try and get into the box room to square it, and then he doesn't square it. And like, for the time he doesn't score, you have a go at him, but then the next time he scores, and so it's like you just had to take the rough with the smooth with him, and it was like, okay, that's fine. But he still got told when he didn't pass it and he hadn't scored. He still got told, but it just tell you to cough like, I'll score the next one, and it was like, all right, okay. Whereas Chrissy was a little bit different. Chrissy would look for you because he didn't have Curo's pace. He didn't have his natural goal scoring ability, but he could still finish. And what he did do is he took players away from Curo and allowed him to play on the shoulder. So he was so good for Curo, but Curo was so good for Chrissy as well, because they just complemented each other in an era where little and large probably helped each other. Do you know what I mean? I don't think it would work now because that's not the way the game's played. But at a time of an era, they just complemented each other.
So it was a sort of like a weird time for Colchester because, Kieran and Iliumo went, and then Lisby and Platt came in, and it was again little and large up top together, and it worked.
It did, yeah. Again, see, Platty wasn't. The difference is between them two is there wasn't a natural finisher between the two of them. Like, don't get me wrong, they scored enough goals, but there wasn't. Curo was just natural, whereas Kev probably needed 2 or 3 chances to score a goal. Curo probably only needed 1 or 2. But they were both with Curo, with Lisby and Platt. They were both just ridiculously strong, like horrible to play against. Like in training, they were horrible to deal with. Platty was like an animal. Like, he was so aggressive. Like, Chrissy was a big lad, but wouldn't use his aggression like what Platty did. So whereas Platty was just, he wouldn't want to fight you, but he would intimidate people, that's for sure. And Lisby was just as aggressive, and they were different, but they were as effective as each other. Both partnerships.
So the one that I've left out, like I say, I'm sitting here now staring at his name, and it's still incredible that he played for us. Yes, it was at the end of his career, but Teddy Sheringham, what was that like? Just being in the dressing room and looking over and being like, he's won the lot. He's done everything.
It was surreal. It was very surreal. We was in Northern Ireland when he turned up to a training camp, and you'd heard rumours that, I think Teddy's coming. And I tell this story a few times, is that you don't realise how famous these people are. You don't realise how famous they are until you're actually with them. So we got told that we could go out at pre-season, have a few drinks as a group in Northern Ireland, and we went out in Northern Ireland. And this, I can't even remember where we were in Northern Ireland. We was in, it might have been Limerick, in fact. It might have been somewhere like that. And we was in this little bar, and there was 2 men and a dog in there, right? No one. And word got out that Teddy Sheringham was in this bar. And within an hour, you couldn't move in this bar, and everybody wanted photo and an autograph from Teddy, and he signed them all, and he was very, very pleasant. But that was the first time I'd actually seen fame on a different level because of Man United, I would imagine. And technically, now don't get me wrong, he couldn't move. He couldn't move at all, don't get me wrong. But technically, there wasn't anyone that I've played with in my career that even comes close to what he was technically.
Yeah, no, like I said, it's still one of them pinch me moments that he's Teddy Sheringham played for Colchester United. Like you say, it was at the end of his career. Like, he couldn't move around as much as he wanted, but you could still see the way that he played was the Man United.
His touch is the best touch I've ever seen anybody. He could put it anywhere he wanted, no matter who was around him, how hard the ball came into him. If it was bouncing in front of him, his first touch was crazy good, like crazy good, every time as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned it a little bit earlier as one of the parts of your career that you actually look back on with not the best of memories, which I think would come as a bit of a shock to most Colchester fans. That League One season, it didn't start the way it ended. After the first 10 games, I think it was only 3 wins. Were you sitting there thinking, we're gonna get promoted at the end of the year, or was it
no?
What changed? What was it that flipped it round that then we made us go on to being such a dominant team that season?
So what Parky did, right? What Parky did, he broke it down into games of 6 or 7 sequences, and he would say, right, how many points are we gonna get out of this 18 or 21 games? And so we broke it into like 7 or 8 mini leagues. And once you hit the target once, it becomes a habit. And you then just become like, no matter what happens, we can't lose. It's really weird. It's really hard to explain. And you can go 1-0 down or 2-0 down, and you just know it's all right. We'll come back. We do it every week. And it just got like that from probably about Christmas.
Yeah.
It was relentless. And it wasn't amazing for me because I was sat on the bench watching this and thinking, I'm not going to get a game here. Because as a player, yes, I want the team to do well. But there's also a part of you that don't want the person in your position to do very well because you want to play. And you're thinking, right, we've won another game. He's not going to change the team now because you don't change a winning team. And so it just was like, okay, this is where I am at the minute and I've got to deal with it. And you just take it on the chin and you just hope that something happens, that you get a chance to go in and prove yourself. And I didn't at all. The only one saving grace for me at the end of the season is Danzy got an amazing move to Birmingham and we didn't replace him with anybody. And it gave me a chance to then go and play like 30 odd games in the Championship, which the season after is my best season, is my most enjoyable season for me. Like that promotion season, as mad as it is, it wasn't the season that I think that's what I look back on fondly.
Yeah. So to be honest, this next question, it's one that me and my dad, we was at the Oval game. Always remember it. 0-0 draw.
Too.
Obviously you came on in the 76th minute.
Yeah, late on.
When that final whistle went, obviously for you probably had the sort of bittersweet feeling because it was the sweet feeling of, oh my God, we've got, for how the season started, we've got the promotion. But the bitter part being like, I just wish I played just a bit
Yeah.
more and just contributed some more. But going into that dressing room and spending it with the fans, and then the parade through the town centre, what was that like as a
Amazing. Like,
Colchester
don't get
United
me
player?
wrong. At that point, so once that final whistle went and we done all of those bits and pieces, the disappointment of that season wasn't there. It was only, this is amazing. I'm going to enjoy every moment of it, and I want to make sure that I cherish every moment with all the crowd, all my teammates, my family. I want to make sure that we cherish all of it. And for 2 weeks, I don't think I was at home much. I was out drinking with the lads and celebrating lots and lots and lots. But it was for that moment, I didn't think about football. I just thought about how amazing and happy I felt. And then the realization of is once that goes and you have your parade and you do all of your, you go out and you pick your medal up in the town hall and that kind of stuff. Then you think, right, okay, I didn't play last year and we're getting promoted. What's going to happen this year? And then by luck, Danzy gets an amazing move and pre-season starts and I do relatively well. The team does okay and the season happens how it does.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, that is, I have like a sort of top three, top five, like Colchester United moments. And although it was probably a very boring and very frustrating 0-0 draw,
Yeah.
just
The best 0-0 draw ever, isn't it?
100%,
Yeah.
100%. You're sort of sitting there. I mean, I didn't have a watch at the time. I was about 2006. I'd have been 11. So you're sort of standing there and you're like, oh, come on. Like, as soon as that whistle goes, it's like, we've done it. We've actually done it.
Yeah.
The bad part is the other team that went up with us, but we won't mention them.
Who won the league as well. That's the worst bit.
Yeah, that's the worst bit. Is
Yeah.
that they done just better than what we
They
did.
did, yeah. They did.
Obviously, you mentioned earlier the FA Cup run against Chelsea. Again, I know it's in this season that you sort of aren't the best sort of fonded with. It's at Stamford Bridge. Unfortunately, again, you sort of find yourself on the bench.
Yeah.
Were you
I'm a Chelsea
more
fan as well, by the way.
okay? So the answer to this question will be different to what I was going to think. Was you looking in the second half when you see Michael Essien and Frank Lampard on the pitch?
Say that again. Sorry, you just broke up.
That's all right. So yeah, the FA Cup game. Were you sitting on the bench looking at Michael Essien and Frank Lampard on the pitch, going, "I'm glad I'm not there," or "I really wish I was like in between them and just playing"?
No, I was so gutted that I wasn't playing. Don't get me wrong, I understood why, because the lads were doing really well. However, I remember, it's really weird, right? Is that I don't remember much about the game because I was in my head, I was pissed off that I wasn't playing, right? But I remember sitting on the bench at Stamford Bridge and looking to my left, and Hernan Crespo is sat there oiling his legs. Like, he had the shiniest legs I've ever seen because he was oiling them. And next to him was Frank Lampard and Joe Cole. And it was like, okay, that's not a bad bench to be next to. But I just remember seeing Crespo looking like $1 million sat next to me, oiling himself up. But one of the things I regret, right, is that as a Chelsea fan, I remember coming into the dressing room after, and I was gutted that I hadn't got on because I was about to go on, and then it got changed and someone else went on, and I was really gutted that I hadn't got on. And then they brought in the Chelsea boys, to be fair to them, brought in their shirts and chucked them in the middle of the floor, and I refused to get a shirt because I had done nothing part of that game, and so I was like, no, I don't want a shirt. I've not been a part of this game, and I wish I had, because as a Chelsea fan, that'd still be here now, and my daughter's a Chelsea fan now, but that was just how pig-headed I am, and it was like, I'm not part of that game, and so I don't want any memory of it. But you still remember the game, and for 35, 45 minutes, we were 1-0 up, and it was like, right, okay, this could be an absolute fairy tale, but they bring Lampard, Cole, and Crespo on, and the game changes.
You didn't look at Crespo oiling his legs and thought maybe I'll give that a go, see if that works for him. It might work for
No,
me.
me and Crespo looked totally different. He had hair that came down to his shoulders and looked $1 million. I was not looking. I reckon I was sulky and everything. So I can't imagine that I was looking at him thinking I could do that. Yeah, not at all.
So we'll come away from the 2006 season.
Yeah.
6th of April 2007, Southend away, Jamie Kieran hat-trick. You mentioned earlier he was a ruthless goal scorer.
Yeah.
A win like that against your rivals, what was that like?
Yeah, that's probably one of the most standout days at Roots Hall as well. It was, yeah, he was that. I think he only had 3 shots that day. I think Kiro, and some of the goals, by the way, he scored that day,
Incredible,
absolutely
incredible,
like ridiculous goals, and yet he doesn't get the credit that everyone thinks he's a bit of a poacher. He was unplayable that day, unplayable. He was like, it was an amazing day at Roots Hall. I never really won much there. It was a tough place to go and get a result, but that day, yeah, it was unbelievable.
So moving ahead to the next year, 16th of August 2008, Huddersfield at home, the first game in the new stadium.
Yeah.
What was it like going from a very small, compact layer road where a 3,000 crowd would still be really loud, really booming, to then move into the nice, big, shiny new stadium? What was the transition like for players? Because the fans there's still some fans that are not sold
it,
on the new stadium. No, they love. Don't get me wrong, I love Layer Road, but I do feel like with what the BWA and everyone's doing at the club, it is starting to feel a bit more like home. What was it like for the players to go from, let's put it in how it was, a very run-down stadium to a nice, shiny, brand new one?
Don't get me wrong, the facilities like far outweighed Layer Road, right? The pitch didn't. Pitch at Western Homes or whatever it is, the community stadium now, is terrible. It's like awful. It doesn't do anything. You can't play any football, and especially after Christmas, it's like garbage. It just lacks some soul. It's it's almost soulless there at times.
Yep.
Whether it's because they're too far away from the pitch. Yeah, it's a lovely facility, and a year earlier it would have been perfect because we would have had bigger crowds in there because we were still in the championship, but we was just a year too late. That's what we were.
Like you say, it's interesting you sort of say that like as a player you were on the pitch and you might sort of be feeling a bit like, oh, I need the crowd to just ump me up, and you're like,
you know what you could hear it. So at Low Road, right, you didn't hear individuals. You like, because it was compact and it was quite noisy. When you went into Western community, like when it was a Western Homes at that point, you would hear the individual people in the crowd like slagging people off. Like, so the amount of abuse that I got at times, it was like you could really hear it. It wasn't everybody shouting it, but it was those individuals that you heard the most, and you just thought, that shouldn't happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, we shouldn't be hearing the individuals. They should be drowned out by everybody else. But it was just it's a real weird place. And Danny Cowley and that have done an amazing job in bringing all those flags and stuff like that there, and they have got it pumping a little bit. But again, it only gets pumping when teams are doing well. That's the reality of it. If teams are doing well, then it'll be loud. If teams are not playing well and they're getting beat week in, week out, it'll be quiet. It's the team needs to spur on the crowd. And I don't think it's been done enough at the moment. That's all.
Yeah. So as a player,
for a long while as well, not just at the moment, for a long while.
As a player, how much does the crowd play into the game?
Huge. Like that Layer Road season when we was the first year in the championship, right? And I think we won 12 on the bounce at home. It was no accident. Do you know what I mean? It was no accident. Like, people didn't enjoy coming down there because the facilities were garbage. Like, they were really, really bad. It was like a rat infested place at the back there. But it was our rat infested place. Do you know what I mean? And on a Friday night or a Saturday afternoon, the place was rocking. And it must have been awful for teams that. I remember Sunderland coming down with Roy Keane and people like that, and within 20 minutes we're 2-0 up, and it's like it's game over. Like, thanks for coming, see you later. It's like no one would have enjoyed being there. And now you go into a lovely stadium where it's all shiny and new, and it's like people don't mind coming down there. There's no atmosphere there, so there's no intimidation. I remember going to Leeds and playing at Leeds. It's horrendous playing at Leeds and Stoke and Cardiff and places like that. It was so hard. You just got abused constantly. But at the Western Homes back then, I don't think anyone you could hear anything like the abuse that you used to get.
Yeah, you go and play at Ellen Road and at Leeds in front of sort of 25,000-30,000.
United, like these places, they're totally different.
Yeah. And then you come back to your home game and you hear Dale in the back row of the South Stand shout something.
What you doing?
Yeah. And you're sort of looking around, going, how you're over there? How can I hear you?
It's madness. It echoes in that stadium. That's the thing.
Yeah. So this next game, as I say, the Yeovil game is probably number one for my favourite games.
Right.
The next one.
You're going to say Norwich, aren't you? Away.
Yeah. 7-1 against Norwich.
Again, right? So this.
What the hell?
I was on the bench that day as well, right? I was on the bench and came on at 5 or something like that. But I think that was one of the most surreal games I've ever seen, in the sense that everything we hit went in. And Norwich on the day, defensively and goalkeeping wise, were a shambles. And we were just prolific that day. I think we must have had 9 shots, I reckon, and we scored 7 of them. It was crazy. Like, it was like a carnival atmosphere at one point at the end. It was like, it's anything we hit, we'll score with. It was madness. And Brian Gunn standing there getting 2 season tickets thrown at him. I was sat on the bench and watching that, and I was thinking, oh my God, he's in trouble, this guy.
Was that one of them moments where you scratching your nose to be like, I can't be seen that I'm laughing at that, but that is hilarious.
I was laughing pretty hard at that.
Yeah.
It was like, that don't happen. People walking across the pitch and throwing stuff at you. It was really weird. And we then lose Lambert to go to Norwich, and he does amazing with them, doesn't he?
Yeah. I look back on that. A friend of mine at work actually asked me earlier today. He asked me about the Lambert bit, because he was like, Lambert was with you when you beat Norwich 7-1, then left you to go to Norwich, then
got promoted.
And got promoted, and then came to our place and done us 5-0. And he said, how did that make you feel? And I went, we beat him 7-6 on aggregate that year, so I don't mind it. But
the only thing is, with that Norwich game, right, it should never have played that night.
It was wet.
Right, was so waterlogged. It was so bad, and we were so bad on the day. It just, don't get me wrong, the pitch was the same for both teams, and they played it miles better than we did. However, when you look at their team that they had, their 2 forwards that day, I don't think there was 2 better forwards in that league. No. They had Grant Holt and Wes Houlihan. Yeah. They were unplayable.
Yeah, I remember when Grant Holt, like you were saying about the pitch conditions, when he scored, he done like the Sol Campbell slide, and I think he started it just by the goalpost and ended up in the corner flag, and even he himself was sort of sliding like, am I actually going to stop? There's a stand there that I'm going to hit.
I can't believe we played it. I remember being on the pitch before the game, and the referees like chucking the ball up in the air and seeing it bounce, and it didn't bounce. And I was thinking, how was he doing? Yeah. How was he called this game on?
Yeah,
but
that was a very, 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 very odd one.
Yeah.
So obviously, I announced that you was coming on the channel a couple of days ago, and I've got some questions here from other Col United fans.
Sure.
I've got one here from Betson. He said, "What did you find to be the hardest moment in your Colchester career?"
Um, so I'm not sure what season it was. So it was under Phil Parkinson. It might have been his first year. It might have been his second year in charge. Maybe his third year. One of those. And we was at home and we was playing against Tranmere, and it was probably about the fifth or sixth game of the season, and I went in for a tackle with Alex Navarro. I remember it like it was yesterday. And for once, I went in way too honest. Like I went in for a tackle way too honest without protecting myself. And he got me how I should have got him. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't a horrendous tackle. He won the ball. We both won the ball. But my ankle wrapped around his studs, right? And I was out for the whole of that season. And I shouldn't have been. It's just we couldn't get to the bottom of why. So I would rehab for 6 to 7 weeks, get to a certain point, and then just as I was about to come back into training with the lads and start doing some contacty stuff, I'd break down again. My ankle would go back to square one. And I remember it happened 3 times and I didn't know what was going on. I had no clue. And it was getting so frustrating that I'd had probably 4 specialist appointments with different specialists, and none of them could really figure out the problem, to the point where Phil Parkinson called me in with the physio and said to me, "Do you think it's in your head? Like, do you think that you just don't want to get?" And I looked at him and I was like, "Are you taking a mic? Like, seriously? Like, well, do you think I don't want to be on the pitch?"
Yeah.
It couldn't be anything further from the truth. And he was like, "Okay, what we'll do is we'll send you to Lillishall and you'll have an intensive 2-week training rehab there, and we'll see how that goes." And I was like, "All right, I'll do whatever Gaffer, I'll do whatever it takes to get fit. I'm not shirking anything here." And he's like, "Right, okay." But I had a specialist appointment the next day with someone down in Harley Street in London. And I walked into there and he grabbed my ankle and he done this little test, and he said, "Your ligament has been overstretched by probably about 4 centimeters. I'm going to need to operate on it as soon as possible. And I'm going to need to cut it in half and stitch it back together." And so I then rehabbed 3 months and I was fine. But it took the best part of about 3 months to find out what the actual problem was. And I was going in every day doing program after program and working, and it became monotonous. And I just thought, I'm not sure I'm ever going to play again here, because no one will know what the problem is. The problem is with that is that since that ankle operation, I could never kick a ball properly again. A lot of people don't know this, but I had to learn how to strike. So how you would normally strike a ball, I can't no longer do anymore because of the pain that I was getting in my ankle. So I had to learn how to strike a ball again without using my laces anymore. And so there was only a small sweet spot that you could hit. So I would shank more balls than I should be because I didn't have such a sweet spot on my foot anymore. And before then, I was building up from 6 to 8 to 9 goals a season. And then I had to change my game totally. And that's when I then became more of a defensive player, because I just couldn't strike the ball with any kind of velocity anymore. It was so painful, and I have so many problems through it now. But I went on and played another 9 years after that, but had to change my game totally. So that was the hardest part. I had to change from being an attacking midfield player that was getting on and scoring goals, getting into the box, to then going, right, I can't do that anymore, or I can't do that as well as I could do anymore. So I'm going to have to change the way I play. And that's why I became that sitting midfield player, because I had to find a new identity to get me in the team.
Yeah. I'll be honest, that covers the question that I've got from John Hyde, which was, what was behind his change in role during his youth career? Was he happy converting from an attack into a defensive midfielder?
I wasn't happy, don't get me wrong, because I enjoyed scoring goals and getting forward, but my ankle wouldn't let me do it anymore. It was just, and people might see that as an excuse, but I can assure you, that from that operation, I couldn't kick a ball properly anymore, and so I had to change.
Yeah, I suppose you look back on it and you sort of sit there and think to yourself, if I'd have sat there and gone, no, I'm going to carry on to try and be that attacking midfielder, you may not have had the next 9 years at Colchester, because you were saying, for right, I'll drop back. That's what, it's a new role for Kem. That's an area that we need. And then that's where you're able to just hold your own.
I don't think I gave it that. I don't think I'm not going to give myself that much credit that I thought about it that far in advance. I just thought I can't do that anymore. I'm in too much pain to be able to do that. And so I will adapt, and hopefully I can find another role within the team. And I did. And I was fortunate that I went on and done another 9 years. Don't get me wrong. I would love to have been able to keep getting on and scoring goals. I know for you to move on and get moves, you need to score goals. I'm well aware of what gets you moves. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And my dad still to this day says that I thought that you was going to have to retire through injury. I didn't think you'd ever play again. But another 9 years after, just thank you. You thank yourself and think, well, at least I managed to carry on playing.
Definitely. So question from Adam. What was your favourite moment at the club, not including the promotion to the Championship? Or obviously, as we found out, didn't really enjoy that season.
No,
what was your sort of, like, you sit there, you close your eyes and you think back at your time at Colchester, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Probably my testimonial.
Yeah.
Probably my testimonial is that they don't have to give you it. Do you know what I mean? They don't have to give you a testimonial, and you're recognised for the longevity that you've given to the team. And don't get me wrong, it works both ways. Like, in the sense that I was only there for 10 years because they wanted to keep me for 10 years, and no one else wanted me for 10 years. Because if I'm being honest, if someone else would have come in for me at a certain point, maybe I would have gone. But I just never let my contract get down to the point where I was running out of contract. So the club we would always speak probably 8 months before contract was running out, and we would negotiate. And I've probably done myself out of money a little bit, because if I would have waited to the end of the season, I might have had more of a bargaining tool to go in and say, well, no, I want X amount of money. But I think for me, it's understanding what you're happy with. At certain points, you then start a family, and so you then start thinking about your family. And don't get me wrong, I was never settled. I would never just say, oh, I'm going to stay here forever and I'm content, because that's not the way I play. I hope that everybody sees that I'm a player that gives everything when I'm on the pitch, and whether I've got 1 game left or I've got 35 games left, is you wouldn't be able to tell what was what. So, yeah, I think my testimonial is probably the most thing that stands out. For the first time, I was on the same pitch as my brother that day. I wanted to play against him and I wanted to play with him. I never really got that opportunity. So to play on the same pitch as him that day was really good. It was just, it was a really lovely day that day.
So you mentioning obviously your brother Muzzy playing. One of the questions from Duncan Stonehouse was, what was it like playing? Obviously, you wasn't playing alongside him in terms of in the league, but you played at the same time as him. What was it like? The pundits sort of maybe comparing you to your brother, or what was it like having your brother at the sort of a couple of leagues higher than what you was?
Sometimes difficult in the sense that you was constantly getting compared, but when you understand football, you know when someone's a better footballer than you are.
Yeah.
So I'm well aware that my brother's a better player than I am, and I'm absolutely fine with that. The only thing I am is I'm proud of the career that he had and I had. So there was never any animosity like, oh, stop comparing me to my brother. The fact that I was being compared to him, for me, is absolutely fine. We've got the same name and we're brothers, and it is what it is. It's just you're forever known as Kem Muzzie's brother, which is fine. I can live with that all day long. And he was an amazing footballer. And for long periods when I was still at Cholton, so from 17 to 20, me and my dad travelled England watching him play in many, many different games. And I couldn't be any more proud of the career that he had. And it's just a shame that it was cut short for injury, because he could have played on in the Premiership for probably 4 or 5 more years. He was an unbelievable player.
Yeah, it was sort of one of them where you sit there and you're like, compare me to him, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I'm happy. He was an amazing player.
Yeah, so Chris Hopkins asked, which player did you play with at Col U that went on to have a better career than you thought? And then the sort of same in the other way around, which player maybe didn't fulfill their potential?
The best, so the player that went on and had the best career would have been George Alacobi. So when he first came from Dulwich Hamlet, I don't want to. He didn't look like a footballer. Like he was left-footed. Most left-footers are really cultured, and they have got like a beautiful left foot. He wasn't like that at all, Georgie. He was super strong, super powerful, super aggressive, raw. And when he got his move to Wolves, I was thinking, like, really? Like, he would play and he would try some daft things for us, like shooting from 45 yards and switching the ball from one side to the other at Lower Road and kicking it out the stadium. And I'm thinking, like, really? And then he gets a move to Wolves, and I'm thinking, like, is it because of his athleticism? And probably it was, right, to start with. And then we played against him. And then all of a sudden, he just learned that he didn't need to do all of that. He just needed to give it to his left winger and defend.
Yeah.
And he was as good as a defender as anybody that you would see. And he'd learned that he didn't need to try all of this flashy stuff. And he went on to have an amazing career. Fair play to him, is because he's such a nice guy, such a genuinely lovely guy.
I remember when he came back to Colchester a few years ago. I think he came to us from Oldham, and it was one of them where we mentioned just before the call, obviously the signed Smodic shirt I've got. We want Smodic to come back. Alacobi came back, and our fans were probably thinking, is this the right thing to do? And he just come back, and it was like, what a player he is.
Yeah.
And he like you say, he was quite big. He was quite a muscly fella. And I always remember when we would play either, I think at the time he was at Wimbledon, when we'd come up against Akinfenwa, and you'd see Akinfenwa versus Alacobi, and it was just like, that is
Mount
together, yeah, right? that's one that if you're the keeper and you see the pair of them go for it, you're like, I'll just stay on my line. I don't want to get in between that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the stories I tell about George Alacobi, right? We before he came, our fitness coach, guy called Stuart Owls, he got everybody into that. Part of our training was Olympic weight training, like to improve your power and to improving your speed, and it really did work, right? And we've been training doing it for the best part of, before Georgie came, I would say 18 months. And so some of us got quite good at it. Like, so some of us started to put on some decent weight into your clean and jerks and stuff like that. And we were standing there, and Georgie comes in. We'd gone from lifting broom handles, by the way, for technique, because we had to learn technique first. Broom handles to probably putting 60, 70 kilos above our head, right? Now, I only weighed 69 kilos, so I'm putting 70 kilos above my head. And George Alacobi comes in day one, and he's told that, right, you're over there, you've just got to start lifting the broom handles first, because you've got to start for technique. It's one of the most weirdest things I've ever seen. He lifted it like he was lifting a carrier bag straight up above his head. Like, the technique was awful, like terrible, but it was like he was superhuman. He looked like he was Superman that day. He just literally went from floor straight up above his head. And I just thought, wow, right, okay, that's the kind of guy you are, is it? Right, fair play. I've been doing 18 months of that, trying to get to that point. And he made me look so inferior. It was
It was one of them where you've lifted the weight and gone, yeah, that felt good. Then you see him
Yeah,
do it, and you just sort of just
yeah,
do that, and you're like, oh,
yeah,
brilliant.
mate.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get showered. Yeah, it
yeah.
was.
He sort of said, oh, what's that? The warm up, and you're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
he
that's
was
the warm
super
up.
strong. He was super strong, Georgie.
He is an incredible athlete and man,
He
and
was
the job he's doing at Maidstone as
Maidstone.
well
Him and Craig.
is
Yeah, him and Fags. Amazing. Yeah.
yeah, it is incredible. So message from a friend of mine at work, Steve. He asked what manager had the biggest influence on your career, both as a sort of player and then sort of getting into the sort of management sort of side as well.
The biggest influence. There's two, right? So Steve Whitten, to this day, I thank him from the bottom of my heart. Like he gave me the career or the opportunity for that career that no one else would, right? So he's the person that no matter what, he's the person I thank, right? But then I have to look at Parky, and he made Colchester. Steve Whitten was brilliant, right? But he was almost like your mate. That's what he was like. He managed like he was a mate. Don't get me wrong. There was authority there, but he would go out and have a drink with you, and he'd get drunk with you, and that kind of stuff. Whereas Parky came in and just put everyone in their place, and like, no, we're not here to not here to have fun. We're here to achieve stuff. And he made us so much more professional than what we were being initially. And I remember him saying, it's all about the 1%. That's all he used to say, is that if we can be 1% better tomorrow, then we're better than yesterday. And if it just means that this gets us 1% better, then it means we're better than what we was yesterday. And we just used to build and build on 1%. And it's really simple, but back then it wasn't spoken about.
Mm. Yeah, you sort of hearing the way that you've been talking about Parky, you can now see. Don't get me wrong, obviously he's had a little bit of help from the two owners, but you can see the work that he's done with Wrexham. Why Wrexham have climbed up. Don't get me wrong, the players they bring in maybe are a bit too good for that level, but it's still Parky is the one that you can see the way I've been talking with you and you've been mentioning him. You can see that that's what he's instilled in that Wrexham
Absolutely.
team.
Yeah, he won't settle. He looks like he's chilled a little bit. Don't get me wrong. He looks like he's changed, and you have to adapt and stuff like that. But I can imagine that he won't tolerate unprofessionalism.
Yeah.
He won't tolerate sloppy performances. The one thing I would say that he's changed is that he prided himself on clean sheets and defensive duties, and it looks now like Wrexham just want to outscore you.
Yeah.
And I never ever thought that I would see that side of Parky, but I suppose when you've got that amount of talent within your squad, you can do it.
Yeah, I think like you say, he doesn't take the sort of like the stuff that maybe some of the managers sort of have to take with who's in his squad, because you look through the Wrexham squad, he's got most of his team that he probably fields at the weekend are over sort of 28, 29, 30 years old, because he knows
they're full of experience, aren't they?
Yeah, full of experience. He knows they're professional and he knows what he's going to get out of them.
Yeah.
But
true.
yeah, no, Parky is phenomenal manager, and if he does the unthinkable and gets some back to back promotions into the Prem, I think he'll have to go down as potentially one of the best managers to ever grace the leagues.
I think you have to be right, which is a madness saying that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Phil Parkinson as best manager in one of the leagues, but it would never have been done before.
No, not at all.
Don't get me wrong, he's had a lot of help with the financial situation, but there's been lots of clubs that have done that as well. So you think about the Salford lot, they spent a lot of money and they couldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, Rob and Ryan have obviously given him a lot of money to be able to go and get these players, but at the end of the day, they're still players that Parky picks the team, Parky trains them, and you can see that he doesn't want he wants people in his dressing room that he knows that if I pick you or I don't pick you,
he can hang you out. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he is perfect. So I've got two last questions, or one last player I want to talk to you about, and then one last question, and then I'll let you go. But honestly, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
No problem.
former player of yours announced his retirement a couple of days ago at the
Greg
stellar
Halford.
age of 40. What Greg Halford coming into the team in 2001, 2002, at that young age, could you see, like sort of with George, could you see that there was a player there?
Sorry, mate, you broke up. Say that again.
So when Halford came in, could you see that there was a player there, sort of like Ella Kobe? You knew that this kid's going to get a move on to a bigger team.
The difference is between him and Georgie, right, is that Greg Halford technically is really, really good. Right. Now, with that, he's 6'4". With that, the only downside back then, because I didn't play with him after that, is that he wasn't the bravest kid in the world. When when things started to go a little bit tough for him, he would find an excuse not to do something. However, you could see that there was a player there, that's for sure. It was just whether or not he could change that attitude. I still don't think he's played enough. So you could see there was a player there, that's for sure. He's just whether or not he could change that attitude of being a baby sometimes. And he did. However, I still think he should have played a lot more games than what he actually did.
Yeah, no, it was he was another one that coming through. It was always a bit of an odd one because he'd start the game maybe at right back or as a defensive midfielder, then
and end up
and
up front, wouldn't he?
And then he was up front.
Yeah.
Was that mainly because, like, as you sort of alluded to, 6'4", the height, the sort of like get the tall man up there for the flick-ons, or was it actually?
Not only that, he was super athletic.
Mm.
Like, he was so fast. Like, when he opened his legs, like, you couldn't get near him, and he could hit a ball like a rocket. So he had the attributes to play anywhere he wanted to. It's just I'm not sure he had the mentality to want to.
Yeah.
And he was a victim of that player again, where you probably don't know where his strongest position is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's probably one of the very few players that you probably see it a lot more now as in like the Premier League and stuff like that. But back then, you didn't really have a right back that was also a defensive midfielder that was also a striker, because they were all very, very different positions. And your right backs were your right backs, your left backs were your left backs, sort of thing. And
he'd make a really good right back now, wouldn't he?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So yeah, as I say, Kem, thank you so much for joining me. This has been absolutely incredible, not only to get to know you, but also to get to know the sort of behind the scenes of Colchester United. The last question that I'll give to you: Colchester United is a very family sort of club. There's lots of kids that go to Colchester games, and there's lots of kids that go to the open days. What advice would you give to a young person that's trying to make it as a professional now, that maybe is in an academy, just wants to stand out a little bit? What advice would you give them?
So I've not coached, right, for about 3 years. I came away from coaching. It's got on my nerves dealing with parents and stuff like that, right? But I really like improving players. It's something that I really enjoy. The problem is that not enough of them work hard to be better. They're almost entitled and think, if I'm good on the ball, that's enough. And there's more to football than just being on the ball. And people might think, oh, you're only saying that because you wasn't a great footballer, right? But one of the stats that that's always stuck out to me is that in probably 9,500 minutes of a game, you're only on the ball for about 2.5 minutes. So for 97.5 minutes, it's what you're doing without the ball. Now, whether that's creating space for somebody else or creating space for yourself or closing somebody down, going to win a tackle, going to win a header, sprinting to receive the ball, intercept something. So what I try and tell everybody, right, is manage the controllables. And so the one thing that you can control, and this is what I used to pride myself on every preseason, is I'm not going to get outworked by any teammate in my squad. Like, I'm going to go back preseason, and I'm going to be the fittest person there. And if I'm not, then I'll be the second fittest person. But no one is going to outwork me. And I think that if you spoke to anybody that I played with, I think that is what they would say was my biggest. No one outworked him. Like, he's 5'7", and he works as hard as anybody else. But that's because you have to. Do you know? And when you're that small, you can't just stroll around unless you're electric quick. And I'm not. Right? I'm 5'7", not quick. I'm a right footballer. I'm decent in the air for someone that's 5'7", and then you think, how does he play for 13 years, 14 years? And it's just through sheer hard work and determination and some ability. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to do myself an injustice and say that I had no ability. I clearly did, for someone to be able to play as long as I did. I just outworked people.
Yeah.
And that is what I would say to everybody. Well, in any walk of life, Ryan, in any walk of life, whether you're playing football, whether you're a milkman, whether you're a dustman, whether you're a bricklayer, outwork people, and you will rise to the level that you will get to.
Yeah, it's that age-old cliche: hard work pays off.
It really does. The harder you work, right, the luckier you become.
Exactly. Kem, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It has been
No
an absolute honour. What is it that you're up to nowadays? What keeps you busy?
I work for I'm the general manager at an events company. We go and build we do 300 events a year. We do weddings, parties. We do sailcloth, teepees, stretch tents, those kind of thing, all of our own furniture. And so I'm in charge during the summer season. I'm in charge of about 70 people, and they're ranging from 17 years of age to 28 years of age to the office staff that are 45, 50 years of age. So it's like, one thing I didn't realise is just how transferable football is. I didn't realise that at all until you get out into the world. I remember finishing football and thinking, oh, the only thing I know is football, so I need to get into coaching. But then you realise there's no money in coaching. Like, you can't earn a living in coaching unless you're manager, and then there's no reliability in managing at all. So you then start forging a career, and you knuckle down, and like I said, you work hard and you outwork people, and you go in from one job to another, and you get promoted and promoted and promoted. And so managing people is something that I really enjoy. I like making them better, making their lives easier on a day-to-day basis. And we're doing all right. I'm doing okay, mate. It's like, don't get me wrong, it's not football, which is what I love doing. But now it's a different life and a different career.
Definitely. Well, best of luck with everything that you do. Again, thank you so much for coming on. And I really do appreciate it.
No problem, mate. Have a good one.
You too. So there we have it. A very open and very honest interview with Colchester United legend, Mr. Kem Izzet. Make sure you do check out Events Under Canvas, which is Kem's current project that he is working on. If you've enjoyed what you've seen today, make sure you hit the like button and also hit subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell notification so you're notified of when I next upload. Head over to X and onto Instagram at officialup the U's and give us a like and a follow over there. But as always, remember, up the U's.